Hey there, folks. Santee at the Arizona Ghostwriters here. I'm here with David Grassé, author and historian.
Howdy.
David has written 3 books on the Old West, specifically Arizona, right?
Arizona Territory.
Arizona Territory. Was there any other state?
No, not really.
Yeah, maybe Texas.
No, still back east.
Yeah. Well, we're really glad you came on here. I've known David a long time. He's actually a ghostwriter as well. He's performed with us in about 3 or 4 different shows. You shot me up at Rawhide. You shot me in Cave Creek. You shot me at that ranch with the peacocks. Laurel. Yeah.
It's nothing personal.
Nothing personal, right? Yeah, longtime friend. It's cool. Yeah. So how did you, I know you're interested in the Old West, and you have been, just like me, for a long time. How did you decide to take pen to paper?
It was actually an accident. I can blame Marshall Trimble for this. Years ago, I used to wear my hair fairly long, and about as long as Commodore Perry Owens. And my sister was paging through Marshall Trimble's Roadside Arizona and came across that famous picture of him. I said, "Oh my God, David, there's somebody in here who looks just like you." And so she handed me the back of the book. I was like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." And I started reading it, and I was like, "How have I never heard of this guy?" I heard of Wyatt Earp and all the other, many stories from Tombstone. This guy is such an impressive gunfight. One guy against 4, and he wipes them all out. And he didn't bring his dentist to the gunfight.
Wow! Slamming Doc Holliday. Okay. Man. Harsh place.
Yeah, so I started doing my own research. Then I started finding all these legends about him. And it was like, okay, this is too good to be true. This is too... And it just kept snowballing. Pretty soon I had a book. And it took me about 1.5 years to get it published, because everybody's like, "Who's Commodore Perry Owens?" I'm like, that's the problem I have.
They all know the picture. They don't say, "Oh, that guy."
Yeah.
Wow, so. That's pretty impressive. So you went to school and got a master's or a bachelor's?
I have a bachelor's in history and a master's degree in library science. I'm actually a librarian by trade because, being a writer doesn't pay the bills unless you're James Patterson.
Right, I understand. Right. No, that's great. And it also gives you the ability to research, I assume.
Every archivist in Arizona now knows me personally.
That's good.
Because I'm always in there, bugging him. And I actually kind of like it, because I'm not just bugging him for like, "Hey, I'm looking up my grandpa," genealogy kind of stuff.
Right. A lot of people have read and believe the myths that we hear on certain subjects. It's the print the legend idea.
This is the West, sir. When the legend becomes fact, print the legend.
I run into this all the time. In fact, I always say my job is to take apart the legends. That's what I'm really good at. So the book about Augustine Chacon, and these stories are still being repeated today. That's the worst part, is, they just go back to the guy who wrote the piece before, and the piece before, and they're using secondary sources that were wrong in the first place.
So they just carry it through.
Yes, carrying it through. And there's one of these authors claimed Chacon killed 53 men. That'd make him the most prolific killer better than John Wesley Hardin. And from what my research, what I came up with, not even close. In fact, probably nobody.
Right.
Which, but I think it's one of those things that the West has so much become a mythology, and it is our modern mythology. And yes, the movies are wonderful, the books are wonderful, and I have absolutely no problem with people writing fiction. It's just when you start trying to pass off these fictions as history, that I start to have a problem with it. It's like there is a genre called historical fiction. Write that.
Right.
Whenever you come in here and interrupt me, you're breaking my concentration. You're distracting me, and it will then take me time to get back to where I was. Understand?
So, Chacon, did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, Chacon. Augustine Chacon.
That's your new book. So, just so you all know, his first book was A Killer is What They Needed, about Commodore Perry Owens, which was a really fascinating read. The research you did on this was amazing. I just was riveted. When we went up to help publicize your book in Holbrook, that made it all the better, because I felt like I had insider knowledge. The second book is The Bisbee Massacre, which is also one of those stories that is tossed around down here, but a lot of people don't really know it.
It kind of got me on this thing of taking apart legends, because when I started writing it, I was writing it thinking, okay, nobody's written this before. I've heard the story. I got 3 chapters into it and then realized that everything I've been hearing was a lie.
Oh, yeah.
And I had to go back and rewrite the 3 chapters.
Oh, wow.
And that was one of the first ones where it's like, wow, okay, so the legend isn't true. And then I started looking for these things where, okay, we have this legend, how true is it? And Chacon was the same thing.
Okay.
And also, I mean, I've been writing for the Tombstone Epitaph and
Oh, that's great.
a couple others.
Well, it's brilliantly written.
Chacon is an interesting one because I don't think a lot of people really know that story.
Which is really amazing because at the time, the late 1890s, early 1900s, he was probably the most wanted man in Arizona.
Is that right?
They didn't even give him a first name, it was just Chacon. And
Really?
I mean, really, I ran across saying, Chacon did this. And everybody knew who he was.
How do you know?
Agustin Chacon knows everything.
Really ended up happening is any crime committed by a person of Mexican Hispanic descent got blamed on Chacon.
Yeah.
And that's the really strange thing about using newspapers, which are technically primary sources, but you also have to consider when writing them where they were coming from.
Right.
Almost every town had 2 newspapers, and usually they were politically divided. And like in the case of Bisbee Massacre, there was only one newspaper that actually stood up for John Heath after it was all over, and all the rest of the newspapers literally said, "Cheese your racket." It's like, we don't want to hear about it. We don't want to hear that he
So,
might have been innocent.
real quick, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Bisbee Massacre, I'm going to put a link in the description field for your books, but you probably have all seen the famous picture of the man hanging in Tombstone from a telegraph pole who was lynched. That's John Heath, who is reported as the ringleader of this whole thing, and I think David finds a different story to that.
Yeah, and I would use the word alleged.
Alleged,
I
yeah.
use that word a lot.
He's the alleged, I can't even spell it, the alleged ringleader?
Or alleged ringleader, yeah.
Okay,
So,
yeah. But Chacon's in that same boat, right? I mean,
Yeah, alleged.
You alleged, right? So, but he gets hanged in 1902, right?
Yeah,
He gets hanged in Solomonville.
Solomonville.
He was hanged for killing Salcido, right?
Yeah, Pablo Salcido, yeah.
But we don't know if he did that or not.
I went in and looked at the court documents, and there was 5 people who testified Chacon did not shoot him.
It makes no sense. It doesn't fit. If it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
When you write one of your amazing books, what's your process? You're going to owe me for that, by the way. No more shooting me, okay? What's the process? Tell me the process. I mean, I know you research a lot, but okay, you get the idea. What's the next step?
Usually, first I start with the newspapers.
I notice that when I do research, I find the same story throughout different papers.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess that's the Associated Press does that.
Yeah. And back
Okay.
then it was called the United Press. And
United Press.
And then I start looking for other primary documents. Court cases are amazing because you usually get, number one, they don't censor them, so you have some, how shall we say, colorful language in there that the newspapers are just blank out.
Right.
They'd actually write it into the transcript of the court document.
I get it.
They didn't curse quite as badly as Deadwood, but they did curse.
Okay, well that's.
And they knew all those words.
He didn't get out of the cock-a-doodle car!
Yeah, I mean, it's really brutal. It ends up with the largest hanging they ever had in the Arizona Territory, where they hang the bandits, all 5 of them at the same time. And I'm really surprised that, Camellia Sly didn't get a picture of that. He got a picture of John Heath, but why wasn't he there for a 5-man hanging?
I don't know. Maybe his lens broke.
I guess.
He didn't have a wide angle lens or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I can't get them all in.
Can't get them all in. Sir, could you remove your hat, please?
I don't think it's nice you laughing.
I also tend to look at things a little differently than the average Western writer because I'm looking at it usually from Outlaw's point of view. What I wanted to know was why did they do this? And what I found out is most of them were actually cowboys who had basically got so stove up and had nothing else. And that's the problem most of these guys ran into when they actually branched out past what they were good at.
That's when they started failing.
Yeah.
We mean business.
Well, David, thanks for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks
And
for having me, John. I appreciate it.
I really, I wish you the best of luck with the new book.
Thank you.
Books. Should be fun. Yeah, it's awesome. And folks, thanks for watching. And as always, Please like, share, and subscribe.
And we'll see you on down the trail.
Really, it's not enough just to shoot me in rawhide. You have to do this. Okay. Okay.
Chacon killed 53 people during his career.
Let's take a break here
Okay.
while they fight. What are you guys fighting about? You got a whole town to yourself, for Pete's sake.